That night in New York City was no different from any other. Skyscrapers pierced the dark sky, their lights a constellation of ambition. The sounds of traffic from the streets below were a constant, humming lullaby, quieter now than in the frantic light of day. But for me, in a matter of minutes, my entire world was about to shatter. I drove back to the office. Advanced architecture. At almost 10 o'clock. The reason was simple. I left the master sketches for a new project on my desk. We had a major client meeting in the morning, and I refused to start the day in a frantic rush. It should have been a simple, routine errand. Our firm occupied the 35th floor of a glass and steel tower in the heart of Midtown. As I stepped out of the elevator, a profound silence greeted me. The hallway, usually bustling with the chatter and footsteps of our staff, was now lit only by the dim, sterile glow of the security system. I felt the chill of the air conditioning, still humming, against my skin. I walked the familiar path, each step echoing with memories. This was the empire Daniel, my husband, and I had built from nothing. We started in a cramped, rented studio in Brooklyn, growing into one of the city's premier architectural firms. Every square inch of this office was infused with our sweat, our arguments, and our shared smiles. The door to Daniel's office was closed, but I saw a sliver of light spilling from underneath. I smiled to myself. He was still here, working hard as always. Daniel was fiercely ambitious, completely dedicated to his work. It was one of the many reasons I loved him. I just wanted to slip in, wrap my arms around him, and whisper, "Let's go home." I turned the doorknob slowly, gently, not wanting to startle him. The heavy oak door swung open in near silence, and the image before me made my heart stop. My world collapsed in that single, silent second. Chloe, my own sister, was sitting on Daniel's lap. Her arms were wrapped around my husband's neck, and they were kissing. A deep, passionate kiss under the soft, warm light of his desk lamp. I stood frozen, as if turned to stone. My mind went completely blank. I heard nothing but the sound of my own heart shattering into a million pieces. The sound was so loud inside my head I was sure they must have heard it. But they didn't. They were lost in a world of their own. Pain, sharp and electric, shot through my body like 1,000 needles. It wasn't anger. Not yet. It wasn't hatred. It was a feeling of having your soul ripped from your body. The scene was so surreal I wanted to close my eyes, to wake up and find it was all just a nightmare. My hand, still on the doorknob, began to tremble. I held my breath, forcing myself not to make a sound. I backed away slowly, so slowly. Then, I gently pulled the door closed, so softly it made no noise at all. I turned my back on that door, a door that had once symbolized our dreams and success. Now, it was the gateway to my own personal hell. I walked out of the office like a ghost. My body moved on instinct, but my mind was in ruins. I don't remember taking the elevator down or walking to my car. The next thing I knew, I was sitting behind the wheel, the car key still clutched in my trembling hand. I stared up at the lights of the tower. My office, no. What used to be my office. The first tear fell, silent and hot on my cheek. I started the car and drove away, with no destination in mind. The image of those two replayed in my head. A horrific, endless loop. The sister I loved and had raised like my own daughter. The husband I trusted with my entire life. They had betrayed me. In the very place I loved. The place I was most proud of. I drove back to our penthouse. The beautiful home overlooking Central Park that Daniel and I had designed together. Every detail a testament to our partnership. It had always been my sanctuary. The place I felt safest and happiest. But tonight, it felt like a cold, empty cage. I stepped into the dark living room. Moonlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows over the expensive furniture. The leather sofa, where we watched movies together, now looked hard and uninviting. The coffee table, where we talked about our future, now seemed cold and sterile. Everything that was once filled with love was now just empty space. Memories assaulted me, relentlessly. The day Daniel got on one knee and proposed to me, right here on this balcony. The day we popped a bottle of champagne to celebrate landing our first major contract. The day I handed Chloe my credit card and told her to use it for her NYU tuition, and whatever else she needed. The joyful smile on her face that day, was it all a lie? The pain intensified, doubling. This wasn't just a cheating husband. This was betrayal by my own flesh and blood. The two people I trusted most in the world had conspired to destroy me. It felt like being stabbed in the heart with two knives at the same time. I sank to the plush rug on the floor, hugging my knees tightly, trying to stop my body from shaking. But I couldn't. The cold was coming from inside, from a heart so broken it felt like it had turned to dust. Why? The question echoed in my mind. What did I do wrong? Was I not a good enough wife? A good enough sister? Was I too focused on work? Was I just too blind to see what was happening right in front of me? The confusion washed over me, along with a wave of self-blame. No. I shook my head in the darkness. This wasn't my fault. I gave everything to my family. To our firm. To them. The fault lay with their disloyalty. Their greed. I looked up at the high ceiling. At the crystal chandelier I had picked out myself. Its reflection had once made me feel like a queen in her castle. But now, it looked like a million frozen teardrops, about to fall and crush me. The night was still young. And I knew, with a terrible certainty, that my life would never, ever be the same again. I don't know how long I sat on that cold floor. Time seemed to stop. Everything around me was a blur, except for the crystal clear image of the scene in that office. Waves of pain crashed over me, one after another, until I could barely breathe. The sound of the front door opening jolted me from my trance. My heart hammered against my ribs. Daniel and Chloe walked in. They were home. The light from the hallway illuminated their faces. Alara, why are you sitting in the dark? Didn't you turn on the lights? Chloe's voice was bright, as if nothing had happened. She started to walk toward the light switch. Don't, I said. My voice was flat, so unfamiliar even to my own ears. Chloe stopped, a little surprised. But she kept up the act. You're back late. Alara, where were you? Daniel asked. His voice sounded tired from a long day of work, or a long day of pretending. He set his briefcase down and loosened his tie. It was a flawless performance, one I would have believed if I hadn't seen the truth with my own eyes. I went to the office to get something, I replied, fighting to keep my voice steady. I forgot some sketches. I slowly rose to my feet, staring at the two people before me. One was the husband I thought I knew better than anyone. The other, the sister I loved with all my heart. Now, they were strangers. Oh, that's good. So you won't be rushed tomorrow? Daniel nodded. I just finished up some work myself. I'm exhausted. He started to walk toward me, about to embrace me like he always did. I took a step back, maintaining the distance between us. A flicker of confusion crossed his face. And Chloe, I said, turning to my sister, why aren't you home yet? It's late. Oh, I stopped by to see Daniel at the office. I was going to ask him to grab a bite, but he said he was busy. So I just waited and kept him company. She gave me a sweet smile. The same smile that used to warm my heart, but now made me sick to my stomach. Every word was a carefully crafted lie. I looked from his face to hers, watching this pathetic, insulting performance. The pain in my heart began to curdle into a cold, hard resolve. My tears had all dried up. All that was left was a terrifying calm. I walked to the coffee table and picked up my phone. I have something interesting for you to listen to, I said softly. I pressed play on the most recent audio file. It was a habit of mine to leave my phone's voice recorder running during urgent work discussions, so I could review details later. Tonight, I'd forgotten to turn it off when I went into the office. The recording wasn't perfect. There was static, but it was clear enough to hear Chloe's giggles, clear enough to hear Daniel's low voice saying, I've missed you, and clear enough to hear that sickening, wet sound of their kiss. It was so distinct it felt like another knife twisting in my heart. The color drained from Daniel and Chloe's faces. The smiles vanished, replaced by shock and panic. The flawless performance shattered in an instant. Alara, what is this? Daniel stammered, at a loss for words. What is it? Daniel? I asked. My voice as cold as ice. Why don't you explain it to me? I'm sorry. It was a moment of weakness. He sputtered. I've been working so hard. So stressed. Chloe was just comforting me. Comforting you? I let out a short, mirthless laugh. Is that what you call it? I turned to Chloe. My sister was trembling, her eyes welling with tears. Alara, I'm so sorry, sniff. It wasn't just my fault. Daniel, he started it. She burst into tears, pointing at Daniel, shifting all the blame onto him. Chloe, Daniel yelled, shocked by her betrayal. Well, it's true. You were the one who called me into your office. You said you missed me, that you loved me. I made a mistake. She collapsed onto the floor, sobbing as if she were the pitiful victim. A new act had begun. The one where the naive little sister was seduced by her wicked brother-in-law. I watched the scene, feeling nothing. No pity. No sympathy. Just a profound emptiness. They could throw blame back and forth all night, but it didn't matter who started it. The truth was, they had worked together to betray me. That's enough, I said, cutting through their pathetic melodrama. My voice was loud enough to make them both stop and look at me. I don't want to hear excuses. I don't want to hear apologies. I don't want to hear anything. I took a deep breath, gathering all the strength I had left. Pack your things and get out of my house. Both of you. My command was clear and absolute. Daniel's eyes widened. Alara, where am I supposed to go? This is our home. Not anymore. I replied. This is my home. A home built with my money and my work. And there is no room for traitors here. Alara, please don't kick me out. Chloe was still crying. Where will I go? That's your problem, I said, my voice heartless. You should have thought about that when you decided to climb into my husband's lap. My words were like acid on their open wounds. I wanted them to feel a fraction of the pain I had endured for the last few hours. Suddenly, my phone rang. The screen lit up with the word Mom. My heart lurched. I knew instantly that Chloe must have texted her. I answered the call, and my mother's anxious voice filled the silence. Alara, what's going on? Chloe just sent me a message saying you're kicking her out of the house. I closed my eyes, bracing myself for what was coming. Mom, I'll explain later. No, not later. Tell me now. Why can't you two just talk things out? Siblings fight. It's normal. You're the older sister. You need to be patient with her. My mother's words were like gasoline on a fire. The feeling of utter isolation washed over me again. Even in this, my mother chose her side. This isn't a normal fight. Mom, I tried to explain. Then what is it? Is Daniel there? Let me talk to Daniel. Before I could say another word, Daniel snatched the phone from my hand. Hello. Mom. It's me, yes, we just had a little misunderstanding. Alara's just very emotional right now. He began to spin his version of the story, the one that made him look best. I stopped listening. I knew my mother would believe him. She loved Daniel like her own son, and always told me how lucky I was to have him. I walked away, out onto the balcony. The place that once held so much happiness. The night wind hit my face. A small, cool comfort. I could hear my mother's voice faintly through the phone. Men make mistakes. Alara, you have to learn to forgive. Don't throw away your family. Think of the embarrassment. The word embarrassment sealed my resolve. I would not live in a sham of a relationship to save face for anyone. This was my life, my pain, and I would be the one to decide what happened next. I walked back into the room. Daniel had just hung up. He looked at me with a hopeful expression, thinking my mother had successfully talked sense into me. Alara, your mother said. I've made my decision. I cut him off. Get out. Before I call the police. The hope in his eyes turned to fury. Alara, are you insane? Yes, I said, staring him down. I might just be. So I wouldn't test me right now. My eyes held no hesitation. No doubt. Finally, Daniel broke. He turned and pulled Chloe to her feet. My sister was still sobbing uncontrollably. They hastily packed a few of their belongings into bags. Then, they walked out the door, leaving only silence and emptiness behind. The door clicked shut. This time, I heard it clearly. It was the sound of a chapter of my life closing, completely and forever. I didn't cry. I didn't feel sad. I just felt tired. So incredibly tired. But deep down, I knew this was a beginning. The beginning of a fight to reclaim my life and my dignity. I picked up my phone again. Scrolling through my contacts, I dialed the number for Marcus, the head of design, the one person at the firm I trusted completely. The next call would be to Julian Sterling, the best corporate lawyer I knew. The war had just begun. After the door closed, silence once again consumed the penthouse. But this time, it wasn't an oppressive silence. It was a healing one. I took a deep, shuddering breath, letting the reality of the situation sink in. My marriage was over. It ended tonight. I felt no regret for throwing them out. The disappointment and pain had crystallized into a steely determination. I would not be a victim in the story. I would not let their actions destroy everything I had worked so hard to build. My first call was to Marcus. He was a senior architect, my right-hand man in the design department. Marcus was a straight shooter, a man with impeccable professional ethics. He answered his phone, his voice thick with sleep. Elara, what's up? It's late. Marcus, I need to talk to you. Urgently. Can you meet me tomorrow morning at the coffee shop near the office? Before work. My serious tone must have alerted him that something was wrong. Of course. Is there a problem? Yes, I said. A big one. I'd rather talk in person. Okay. A day. I'll be there. I hung up, feeling a small weight lift off my chest. At least I wasn't fighting this alone. The next call was to Julian Sterling. Our firm had used his legal services for business contracts before. He had a reputation for being razor-sharp and never losing a case. Elara, this must be important. Calling at this hour. It is. Julian, I need your help. I want to file for divorce, and I need to protect my stake in my company. I explained what had happened, concisely and factually. There was no weeping, no emotional outburst, just the cold, hard facts. Julian listened in silence before responding in a firm, measured tone. I understand. Don't do anything rash. Come to my office tomorrow at 1 p.m. Bring every document you have related to the company and your marriage. We'll handle this, and we'll handle it fast. Talking to those two men gave me an anchor. The chaos in my mind began to organize itself. I knew the road ahead would be difficult. Daniel wasn't the type to give up easily, especially when money and power were involved. He would fight me every step of the way. I went to my home office within the penthouse, a room filled with design books and project sketches. This was my true sanctuary. I powered on my computer and accessed the company servers. I had to be prepared. I had to gather all the necessary data before Daniel realized what was happening and locked me out. I spent the entire night downloading critical files, project contracts, financial statements, income and expense ledgers. The deeper I dug into the system, the more I noticed irregularities. There were massive expenses billed under special project consulting, payments I had never been aware of. The receiving account belonged to a company with a name I didn't recognize. A cold sense of dread began to creep over me. When the first light of dawn streaked across the sky, I was still sitting at my computer. My body was exhausted, but my mind was more alert than ever. I showered and dressed, choosing my most powerful, impeccably tailored suit. Today was not a day to show weakness. I had to be strong, not just for myself, but for the other employees who believed in me. I arrived at the coffee shop before Marcus. He walked in, his face etched with concern. Elara, what happened? You look terrible. I didn't beat around the bush. Daniel is cheating on me. With Chloe, my sister. Marcus's eyes widened in shock, but his expression wasn't as surprised as I'd expected. He paused for a moment, as if weighing whether or not to say something. I should have told you sooner. He finally said. I've seen Daniel and your sister out together after work. Just the two of them. I saw him buying her designer bags, but I didn't want to say anything. I was afraid it was a misunderstanding and I would just upset you. His words were a painful confirmation. I had been a fool, too blind to see what was happening right under my nose. It's okay, Marcus. I know now. I pushed down the fresh wave of pain. The reason I asked you here is because I need your help. I'm divorcing Daniel and I'm splitting from the company. You're leaving Vance Architecture? He asked, alarmed. I'm not leaving. I'm being forced out. I know Daniel will try to seize control of the entire company. He's the CEO. He controls the finances and all the business connections. But you're the heart of the design department. Without you, the company is nothing. That's what I wanted to talk to you about. Marcus, if I have to leave and start a new firm, will you come with me? It was a huge risk, asking him to abandon his security to start over with me. Marcus looked at me, his expression serious. I saw hesitation, but I also saw loyalty. Wherever you go, I go, he answered firmly. Me, and a lot of the other designers. We work here because we believe in your vision. Elara, not his. Tears welled in my eyes, but these were tears of gratitude. On a day when I felt I had no one left, here was someone willing to stand by my side. Later that morning, the call from my mother came again. This time, her voice wasn't angry, but filled with disappointment. Elara, why are you doing this? Why are you being so stubborn? Now Daniel and your sister have to live in a hotel. It's pitiful. And what about me? Mom, isn't it pitiful? I shot back. the hurt rising in my throat. The woman whose husband and sister stabbed her in the back. Isn't that pitiful? I just want this to end peacefully. We're family. You have to forgive. What you're doing is destroying everything. Destroying our family's reputation. The family's reputation is more important than my feelings. Alara, she yelled. If you still consider me your mother, you will go back to Daniel, and you will bring your sister home. I am begging you. I hung up. I couldn't listen anymore. Every word she spoke was a knife, twisting in the same wound. I felt completely and utterly alone. The family I thought I could count on was the first to cast me out. My mother's love was conditional, predicated on my sacrifice and endurance to maintain a respectable facade. That afternoon, I went to Julian Sterling's law office. I handed him all the documents I had prepared, including the files on those suspicious financial transactions. He reviewed them carefully, his brow furrowing deeper and deeper. Alara, he said, looking up at me, this might be more complicated than just a divorce. From this data, it looks like Daniel may have been embezzling money from the company. This is a criminal matter. My heart dropped. Embezzlement. I never thought Daniel was capable of something so depraved. Whatever little love I had left for him vanished completely, leaving only a hollow emptiness and the most profound sense of betrayal. What can we do? I asked, my voice trembling. First, we file a motion for an emergency injunction to freeze the company's assets and accounts. This will prevent Daniel from moving any more money. Then, we will begin the divorce and asset division proceedings, alongside pursuing criminal charges for embezzlement. Julian laid out the steps clearly. It was an all-out war, not just on the battlefield of the heart, but in the arena of the law. I walked out of the law firm in the early evening. The New York sky was turning a soft orange. I felt exhausted, in body and soul. But in that exhaustion, there was a clear, unwavering purpose. I wasn't fighting for revenge. I was fighting for justice, to protect what was rightfully mine, and to build a new chapter of my life, on my own terms. The foundation of my marriage may have crumbled, but this was my chance to build a new one, stronger than before, a foundation that belonged to me, and me alone. The week after I filed for divorce and the court granted the temporary injunction, my life descended into total warfare. It was a cold war, with no direct confrontation, but filled with strategic maneuvers and pressure from all sides. The home that was once our sanctuary became my command center. I channeled my grief into energy, my tears into determination. Julian Sterling worked with swift efficiency. The court order was served to Daniel at the office on Monday morning. I could picture his face, a mask of shock and fury. The injunction meant he couldn't conduct any significant financial transactions on behalf of the company without court oversight. It was a sudden, brutal amputation of his business power. Of course, he didn't take it lying down. Daniel called me dozens of times, but I didn't answer. He switched to texts, which began with pleading. Alara, why are you doing this to me? We can talk this out. Don't let it get this far. When I didn't respond, the tone shifted to threats. You think you can win this? Alara, don't forget who built the client relationships for this firm. Without me, you're just an architect nobody knows. I read every message with a calm heart. His words no longer hurt me. They only confirmed that I had made the right decision. A man like Daniel loved only himself and his own interests. He had never truly valued me, only saw me as a tool to create the designs he could use to make money. Meanwhile, Marcus acted as my secret informant inside the company. He reported that the atmosphere in the office was incredibly tense. Daniel had called a meeting with all department heads, excluding Marcus. He was trying to spin a narrative that I was mentally unstable, suffering from a breakdown, and incapable of working. He accused me of trying to destroy the company out of an emotional whim. He's trying to make everyone believe you're the villain, and he's the one protecting the company. Marcus told me over the phone. His voice strained. Most of the staff is confused, but the accounting and marketing departments, the ones loyal to him, are starting to turn against our design team. It's okay, Marcus. Let him talk. The truth is the truth, I replied. Right now, I need you to gather all my design drafts and our team's portfolio, especially for the projects Daniel pitched to clients without me. Can you find copies of the contracts and related documents? I didn't just want a divorce. I wanted proof that the brains and labor that built Vance Architecture were primarily mine. Marcus and a few trusted designers began their covert mission. It felt like they were spies operating within their own organization. Every evening, They would secretly copy files and scan important documents, bringing them to me at a quiet coffee shop. With every thick folder I received, my confidence in this fight grew. So many sketches drawn by my own hand. Concepts I had written out in painstaking detail. Many were for the landmark projects that had made our firm's reputation. But in the client presentations, my name was listed merely as senior design consultant, while Daniel's name was blazoned across the top as project director. He had been slowly, systematically diminishing my role for years, and I had been foolish enough never to notice. While the war at work was quiet, the war at home was raging. My mother called me every day, sometimes crying, sometimes scolding. Chloe was feeding her a constant stream of lies, painting herself as a tragic heroine being bullied by her cruel older sister. Do you have any idea how hard it is for Chloe right now? Living in a cramped hotel room with Daniel? She can't eat. She can't sleep. It's all your fault. And what about my hardship? Mom, have you ever once asked about that? Our conversations always ended in mutual pain. I was beginning to understand that sometimes a mother's love comes with a heavy dose of bias. She always saw Chloe as a baby of the family who needed protection, while I was the older sister who was expected to sacrifice and endure. The rift between us was growing wider. As for Chloe, she began to show her true colors. She posted pictures on social media of herself and Daniel at lavish restaurants and expensive resorts. The captions were never explicit, but it was an unofficial, defiant announcement of their relationship. Concerned friends started texting me. I didn't reply to anyone. I just blocked her posts and moved on with my life. Her actions no longer caused me pain, only a deep sense of pity. One night, I was reviewing the mountain of documents Marcus had brought me. It was the financial data I had downloaded from the server that first night. I was scanning the list of wire transfers to the consulting firm named D.C. Strategic Partners. The name felt vaguely familiar, but I couldn't place it. On a whim, I searched the company name in an online business database. What I found made my blood run cold. D.C. Strategic Partners was registered with two shareholders. The first was Daniel Vance, my husband, and the second was Chloe Hayes, my sister. D.C. Daniel and Chloe. My heart pounded in my chest. My hands grew icy. This wasn't just an affair. This wasn't just stealing my work. This was a conspiracy to embezzle company funds. They had created a shell corporation, generated fake invoices for consulting, and then Daniel had approved payments from Vance Architecture to their own company. For how long? I scrolled back through the transaction dates. It had started almost 2 years ago. Around the same time Chloe began her internship at our firm. The monthly transfers ranged from tens of thousands to over $100,000. In total, over the past 2 years, they had siphoned nearly $3 million. I felt as if I'd been hit in the head with a sledgehammer. All the trust I ever had for these two people disintegrated into nothing. This wasn't a recent mistake. This wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment. They had deliberately and systematically planned to betray and rob me from the very beginning. Every smile, every sweet word, every loving gesture, it was all a grand performance to deceive me. The tears I thought had run dry came back. But they weren't tears of grief. They were tears of rage, of a profound disappointment in humanity. I had been betrayed in the coldest possible way by the two people I loved most. This pain was deeper than anything I had ever felt. It was like discovering that your home was being eaten from the inside out by termites. And those termites were the people who shared your bed and ate at your table. I immediately called Julian Sterling, not caring how late it was. My voice trembled as I told him what I had found. Julian, this is so much worse than we thought. Stay calm. Alara, he said, his voice a steadying force. This is a smoking gun. This is the evidence that will win us this case. Definitively. Bring everything to me tomorrow. We're switching from defense to offense. I couldn't sleep that night. Memories flooded my mind. The time Chloe said she wanted a new car, and Daniel offered to make the down payment as a graduation gift. The time they took me on a trip to Europe, staying in the most luxurious hotels, which Daniel claimed was paid for by a huge bonus he'd received. It was all my money. The money I had earned through sleepless nights and hard work. The money they had stolen from me. Together, the feeling of being a fool was overwhelming. But I pushed it away. This was not the time for self-pity. This was the time to fight. They had awakened a beast inside me that I never knew existed. And I was going to make them understand that betraying my trust came with a very, very high price. The next morning, I arrived at Julian Sterling's office with a new pile of evidence. His eyes lit up the moment he saw the registration documents for D.C. Strategic Partners and the complete list of wire transfers. "This is brilliant, Elara," he said. "This is what we call an open and shut case. It traps them completely." Our strategy shifted immediately. We were no longer just filing for divorce and division of assets. We were launching a major offensive, suing Daniel and Chloe for conspiracy, fraud, and embezzlement. It was a definitive, brutal decision. I knew it meant severing ties with my sister, and possibly my mother, forever. But I had no other choice. Justice had to be served. When the criminal summons was served to Daniel and Chloe, the situation exploded. Daniel showed up at my penthouse, screaming and banging on the door. "Elara, are you trying to destroy my life? Open this door. We need to talk." I didn't open it. I simply called building security and had him escorted off the premises. I watched him on the intercom screen, his face twisted with rage and desperation. The man who had always been so suave and confident now looked utterly pathetic. Naturally, the shockwave hit my family with full force. My mother called me, her voice a shrill scream. "Elara, what have you done? You're pressing charges against your own sister? You're not human. You're a monster." Her words were like lashes on my back. "Mom, they stole almost $3 million from me, from the company. Money I worked day and night for." I tried to reason with her. Is money more important than family? You want your sister to go to prison? If you don't drop these charges, you can forget you have a mother. She slammed the phone down, leaving me in a silence I was filled only with my own choke sobs. It hurt. It hurt so much it felt like my heart was splitting in two. The one day I needed my mother most, she chose to protect the one who was in the wrong, just because she was the younger child. Her love for me was truly gone. News of the lawsuit spread through the architecture and development community like wildfire. Vance Architecture, once a rising star, was now a scandal. Clients lost faith and began to pull their projects. The employees of the firm were starkly divided. Those loyal to Daniel, mostly in management and marketing, started spreading vicious rumors about me. I was a scorned, hysterical wife, driven mad by jealousy. I had fabricated the embezzlement story to ruin his reputation. They painted me as a villain, and Daniel and Chloe as the victims of my rage. The online chatter was brutal, a mix of sympathy and vicious condemnation. I had to shut down all my social media accounts to escape the cruelty. Daniel and Chloe fought back. They hired lawyers and launched a counteroffensive. They claimed D.C. Strategic Partners was a legitimate consulting firm, and the money transferred was reasonable compensation for their services in marketing and client acquisition. They started fabricating false evidence to support their claims. The pressure mounted from every direction. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. I lost weight. Some nights, I would wake up in a cold sweat, terrified and alone. This war was bigger and uglier than I could have ever imagined. There were moments I felt exhausted, wanting to give up and run away from it all. But every time I felt weak, I would remember the image from that night in the office. The image of the two people I loved betraying me. That pain would turn into anger, and that anger would give me the strength to fight on. I would not let them win. I would not let evil triumph. Marcus became my rock during this time. He called to check in, always offering words of encouragement. "You have to stay strong, Elara. All of us in the design team still believe in you." His words were a soothing balm. He continued to secretly help me gather more evidence, pointing out the connections between the projects D.C. Strategic Partners claimed to have consulted on, and the projects where Daniel had stolen my ideas. The puzzle pieces were fitting together, revealing an ever-clearer picture. One day, an unmarked package arrived at my door. Inside was a small flash drive. Curious, I plugged it into my laptop. It contained several audio files, recordings of conversations. I clicked play, and my blood ran cold. It was the voices of Daniel and Chloe. They were discussing how to fabricate evidence for their case. "We need to backdate the proposals. Create fake meeting minutes. Make it look like your company was actually working for us." Daniel's voice said, "What if they find out?" "Daniel, I'm scared." Chloe's voice was full of anxiety. "Don't worry. As long as our stories match, we'll be fine." The court looks at documents. Who's going to know they were made yesterday? I listened to all the files, my heart hammering. What was this? Who sent it? It had to be someone on Daniel's side who couldn't stomach what he was doing and wanted to help me secretly. I didn't know who they were and made his secretary. Maybe someone in accounting. But whoever they were, they had just handed me the most powerful weapon of all. I rushed the flash drive to Julian Sterling. When he heard the recordings, he smiled for the first time since we'd met. "It's over, Elara," he said. "This is the end for them. Falsifying evidence for a court proceeding is a serious felony. This piece of evidence makes their case completely indefensible." A wave of relief washed over me. It was as if the dark storm clouds that had been hanging over my life for weeks were finally parting.